When billionaire CEO Graham Sterling offers $10,000 to delivery driver Eva Carter, just to talk, neither of them expects a single hour to change everything. But what begins as a transaction soon becomes a connection that challenges both their worlds. Can love survive when privacy vanishes, stakes rise, and past scars resurface? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Rain pounded the streets of downtown as Eva Carter raced through the crowded sidewalks, trying to shield the two large bags of gourmet lunch from getting soaked. At 35, she wasn't where she'd imagined herself in life. 3 years ago, she'd been a marketing assistant with dreams. Now she was a delivery driver with overdue bills. "Excuse me? Coming through," she called out, dodging a businessman with an umbrella. Eva checked her watch and groaned. She had exactly 7 minutes to make it to the Falcon Ridge Enterprises building before her delivery would be considered late. Another late delivery meant another black mark with the app, and she couldn't afford to lose this gig. Not with rent due next week, and her brother Matteo's soccer cleats falling apart at the seams. The gleaming marble tower of Falcon Ridge Enterprises came into view, its glass facade reflecting the stormy sky. Eva rushed through the revolving doors, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor of the lobby. "Delivery for the executive suite," she panted to the security guard, who barely glanced at her before waving her through. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Eva hurried down the hallway, following the signs to the executive suite. She knocked on the heavy wooden door, trying to catch her breath and straighten her damp hair. "Come in," a deep voice called from inside. Eva pushed open the door and found herself in a massive office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rain-soaked city. A man stood by the window, his back to her. He was tall with broad shoulders under an expensive suit. When he turned around, Eva was struck by how still he seemed, like someone who rarely needed to rush anywhere. "Your lunch delivery, sir," Eva said, placing the bags on the large desk. "Sorry if I'm cutting it close. The rain is terrible today." The man didn't immediately reach for the food. Instead, he looked at Eva with an expression she couldn't quite read. His eyes were gray, like the sky outside, and they studied her face with unusual intensity. "You're drenched," he said finally. Eva glanced down at her soaked jacket and jeans. "Occupational hazard. I forgot my umbrella this morning." The man seemed to make a decision. "I'll give you $10,000 if you sit and talk to me for an hour." Eva laughed, assuming it was some weird rich person joke. "Good one. I'd better get going. I have more deliveries." "I'm serious," he said, reaching for his checkbook. 1 hour of conversation, $10,000. Eva's laughter died in her throat. She stared at him, searching for signs that he was messing with her, but his expression remained unchanged. "Why would you pay someone that much money just to talk?" she asked suspiciously. "Because you looked at me like I'm a regular person," he answered simply. "Do you know who I am?" Eva shrugged. "The guy who ordered lunch?" A small smile appeared on his face for the first time. "I'm Graham Sterling." The name meant nothing to Eva, and her blank expression made that clear. "I'm the CEO of Falcon Ridge Enterprises," he added. "Oh," Eva said, still not particularly impressed. "Congratulations?" Graham's smile widened slightly. "So, will you stay? 1 hour? $10,000. Eva thought about her dead car battery, the past due rent notice, Matteo's worn-out cleats, and the stack of medical bills from her mom's hospital stay last year. She looked at the serious man standing before her and made a decision. "Let me call my supervisor and tell him I'm taking a break," she said, pulling out her phone. 20 minutes later, Eva sat in a comfortable leather chair across from Graham Sterling, CEO of one of the most powerful investment firms on the East Coast. She had taken off her wet jacket, and a cup of hot coffee steamed in her hands. "So how does this work?" Eva asked, still feeling like she was part of some elaborate prank. "You just want me to talk?" Graham nodded. "Tell me about yourself." "Your job, your life, whatever you want." Eva laughed nervously. "I deliver food for a living, not much to tell." "Is that all you do?" Graham asked, sitting back in his chair. Eva shrugged. "I also wait tables 3 nights a week at Marino's. It's an Italian place on 7th Street. And before that?" Eva sipped her coffee. "I worked in marketing for a cosmetics company, got laid off when they downsized." "You miss it?" Ava thought about it. Parts of it. I miss having benefits. I miss knowing exactly how much money I'll make each month. She smiled wryly. I don't miss my boss or the 2-hour meetings that could have been emails. Graham actually chuckled at that. The sound seemed rusty, like he didn't use it often. The conversation continued, surprisingly easy despite the bizarre circumstances. Eva found herself telling him about her 15-year-old brother, Matteo, who lived with her since their mother had gotten sick. She told him about her ancient car that sometimes started if she turned the key just right, and whispered nice things to it. Your turn, Eva said eventually. Fair's fair. Tell me something about you. Graham seemed startled by the request. What? Do you want to know? Anything. What's it like being so rich you can throw around 10 grand for conversation? Something flickered across Graham's face. Not anger, but something more complicated. I grew up in a house with 23 rooms, he said quietly, and most days I couldn't find another person to talk to. My father was always working. My mother had her charity functions. The staff had strict instructions not to disturb me unless it was mealtime. Eva hadn't expected such honesty. That sounds lonely. It was. Graham stood and walked to the window. Now I have people around me, constantly. Employees, investors, board members. But they all want something. They see my net worth, not me. And that's why you're paying me, because I don't know how rich you are? Graham turned to her. Because when you walked in here, you saw a man, not a bank account. Do you know how rare that is in my life? Eva didn't know what to say to that. She glanced at her watch. Our hour's almost up. Graham nodded and returned to his desk. He wrote out a check, the pen scratching across the paper in the quiet room. Here, he said, sliding the check across to Eva. Eva stared at the check made out for $10,000. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. This would solve so many problems, at least temporarily. Thank you, she said, carefully folding the check and putting it in her pocket. Graham walked her to the door. As she was about to leave, he spoke again. If I gave you another one, would you come back tomorrow? Eva turned to look at him. She saw a wealthy, powerful man who could buy anything he wanted, but she also saw something else, loneliness, the same kind she sometimes felt late at night when Matteo was asleep and the apartment was too quiet. I'll think about it, she said, and stepped into the hallway. The next day, Eva told herself she was crazy for even considering going back. The man was clearly lonely, but that wasn't her problem. She had deposited the check first thing in the morning, half expecting it to bounce, but the bank teller had processed it without blinking. Eva had picked up an extra delivery shift, determined to get back to her normal life. But when she found herself with a delivery to a building just 2 blocks from Falcon Ridge Enterprises, it felt like fate. Before she could change her mind, Eva walked into the marble lobby and took the elevator to the top floor. The same secretary from yesterday looked up in surprise. Is Mr. Sterling available? Eva asked, heart pounding. He's in a meeting, but... The secretary stopped as the office door opened, and Graham emerged with 2 men in suits. Graham froze when he saw Eva. The 2 businessmen looked between them, confused by their CEO's sudden distraction. We'll discuss the Singapore deal tomorrow, Graham told the men, not taking his eyes off Eva. I have another appointment. When the men had gone, Graham gestured Eva into his office. You came back, he said, sounding genuinely surprised. Eva nodded. I need the money, but that's not the only reason. Graham raised an eyebrow. No? You said something yesterday about being surrounded by people, but still feeling alone. I know what that's like. Eva shrugged. Plus, it was kind of nice to just talk to someone who's not asking me to bring them extra napkins, or complaining that their food is cold. Graham smiled. A real smile this time, one that reached his eyes. So, what shall we talk about today? What began as a bizarre business arrangement quickly developed a rhythm. Every afternoon at 2 p.m., Eva would arrive at Graham's office. Their conversations ranged from favorite movies to childhood memories to dreams they'd put aside. Graham told Eva about growing up with the pressure of inheriting his father's company, about the constant expectations, about never feeling good enough despite his success. Eva told him about taking care of her mother through cancer treatments, about becoming Matteo's guardian at 32, about the marketing career she'd loved and lost. A week into their arrangement, Eva arrived to find Graham's office empty. His secretary directed her to the roof, where she found him waiting with a picnic lunch spread out on a table. "I thought we could eat while we talked today," he said, looking almost shy. The food was simple: sandwiches, fruit, and lemonade, not the fancy catered meals she'd expected from someone like him. "Did you make these yourself?" Eva asked, taking a bite of a slightly lopsided turkey sandwich. Graham nodded. "I haven't made my own lunch since college. I might be a little out of practice." Eva laughed. "It's good. A little heavy on the mayo, but good." As they ate, Graham asked about Matteo, genuinely interested in Eva's stories about her brother's soccer games and school struggles. "He sounds like a great kid," Graham said. "He is," Eva agreed. "He deserves better than what I can give him." "What do you mean?" Eva sighed. "He needs new soccer cleats. His coach says he's got real talent, but his shoes are falling apart. And I just can't afford new ones right now, even with—" She stopped, embarrassed to mention the money Graham had been paying her. Graham was quiet for a moment. "What else would you do if money wasn't an issue?" Eva thought about it. "I'd get our apartment fixed up. The heating's been spotty for months. I'd pay off my mom's medical bills, maybe take some classes to get back into marketing." "You really liked it?" "I loved it," Eva admitted. "Creating campaigns, seeing people respond to something I helped design. It felt like making a little mark on the world, you know?" Graham nodded slowly. "I do know." That evening, when Eva arrived home, she found a package outside her apartment door. Inside was a pair of top-of-the-line soccer cleats, exactly Matteo's size. Eva stared at the shoes, a mix of emotions washing over her. Gratitude, certainly, but also something like unease. She hadn't given Graham her address. The next day, Eva arrived at Graham's office with the shoes in a bag. "You can't do this," she said, placing the bag on his desk. Graham looked confused. "I thought you said he needed them." "He does, that's not the point." Eva crossed her arms. "How did you even know where I live?" Graham had the grace to look embarrassed. "I asked my driver to follow you home yesterday. I realize now that was inappropriate." "Yes, it was," Eva agreed firmly. "Look, I appreciate the thought, but you can't just buy things for us." "Why not?" "Because that's not what this is," Eva gestured. Between them. "You're paying me to talk to you. That's our arrangement, not whatever this is." Graham was quiet for a long moment. "What if I want it to be more?" The question hung in the air between them. Eva felt her heart skip a beat, but she pushed the feeling aside. "More what? What exactly are you suggesting?" "I don't know," Graham admitted. "I just know I've enjoyed these conversations more than anything in years. When you leave, I find myself thinking about what I want to tell you tomorrow." Eva softened slightly. "I've enjoyed them too. But that doesn't mean you can start buying things for me or my brother." "I'm sorry," Graham said sincerely. "I'm not very good at friendship, or whatever this is." Eva nodded. "Here's the deal. I'll keep the shoes for Matteo because he really does need them, but no more surprise gifts. If you want to help, talk to me first." Graham agreed, and their daily conversations continued. But something had shifted between them. A new awareness, a cautious curiosity about what exactly was developing in that high-rise office overlooking the rain-soaked city. 2 weeks after. Their arrangement began. Eva's car finally gave up the ghost. She was on her way to a morning delivery when the engine made a horrible grinding noise and died completely. No amount of sweet-talking or key-jiggling would bring it back to life. "Perfect. Just perfect," Eva muttered, hitting the steering wheel in frustration. She called her supervisor to explain the situation, then arranged for a tow truck she couldn't afford. By the time everything was sorted out, she had missed 3 deliveries and lost half a day's pay. Eva trudged home on foot, exhausted and worried. Without a car, she couldn't do deliveries. Without deliveries, she couldn't make rent. The cleats for Matteo had been a blessing, but now she faced an even bigger problem. When she finally reached her apartment building, Eva stopped short. Parked at the curb was a blue Honda Civic, not new, but in good condition. A small envelope was tucked under the windshield wiper with her name on it. Heart pounding, Eva opened the envelope and found a note in now familiar handwriting. Don't stop showing up. I'm not done listening. Keys are with Mrs. Diaz in 2B. Eva stared at the car, a mix of emotions washing over her. Relief, gratitude, but also something like anger. She marched up to her elderly neighbor's apartment and knocked. Mrs. Diaz opened the door with a smile. "Ah, Eva, a very nice man dropped these off for you." She handed over a set of car keys. "He said it was a work benefit. Your company must really value you." Eva took the keys, thanking Mrs. Diaz while trying to keep her expression neutral. Inside, though, she was seething. She had explicitly told Graham not to buy things for her. Instead of going to Graham's office the next day, Eva called his secretary. "Please tell Mr. Sterling I won't be coming in today," she said stiffly. Oh, the secretary sounded surprised. "He mentioned you might call. He asked me to tell you he'll be at Riverside Park at 2 p.m. near the boathouse if you change your mind." Eva hung up, determined to stand her ground. But by 1:30, curiosity and indignation got the better of her. She drove the Honda to Riverside Park, rehearsing what she would say to Graham. She found him sitting on a bench, looking more casual than she'd ever seen him, in khakis and a blue sweater. When he spotted her, his face lit up before he quickly controlled his expression. "You can't buy me a car," Eva said without preamble. Standing in front of him with her arms crossed, Graham gestured for her to sit. "Technically, I didn't buy you a car. The company has a fleet of vehicles for employees. That one was due to be rotated out. I simply had it detailed and reassigned." Eva wasn't buying it. "I'm not an employee of your company." "No," Graham agreed, "but you have been providing a valuable service. Think of it as a tool to help you continue that service." Eva sat down next to him, exasperated. "You can't just solve every problem by throwing money at it, Graham." "Why not? Money is something I have. Problems are something you have. It seems like a simple equation." "Because—" Eva struggled to articulate why his gesture bothered her so much. "Because I don't want to be a project. I don't want to be someone you fix because you feel sorry for me." Graham was quiet for a moment. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" "Because first it was just talking, then it was soccer cleats. Now it's a car. What's next?" Graham turned to look at her directly. "I don't know what this is," he admitted. "I just know that for the first time in years, I look forward to something every day. Not a business deal or a stock price, but seeing a person." "Seeing you?" Eva felt her resolve weakening. "You can't buy my time, Graham." "I don't want your time," he replied, his voice soft but intense. "I want your trust. And I don't know how else to earn it." The honesty in his voice made Eva's anger fade. She sighed heavily. "Most people start with smaller gestures, coffee, flowers, not automobiles." A ghost of a smile appeared on Graham's face. "I'm not good at small gestures. I never learned how." "Then maybe it's time you did," Eva suggested. "Starting now, no more checks for our conversations. No more expensive gifts. If this is—" She hesitated. "A friendship, then let's make it a normal one." "Define normal," Graham said, looking genuinely curious. And so began the strangest chapter yet. Graham Sterling, CEO of Falcon Ridge Enterprises, began learning how to be a regular person. It wasn't always easy. Their first normal outing was to Mateo's soccer game. Graham showed up in a suit and tie, standing out among the parents in jeans and sweatshirts. But he clapped and cheered louder than anyone when Mateo scored a goal in his new cleats. After the game, Eva introduced them. "Mateo, this is my friend." "Graham." Graham extended his hand formally, and Mateo shook it with a curious expression. "You're the guy who sent the cleats, right? They're awesome." "Thanks, man." "You're welcome," Graham replied, looking pleased and a little surprised at the easy gratitude. As they walked to the parking lot, Mateo turned to Graham. "You coming over for pizza? Mom always gets pizza after games." Graham glanced at Eva questioningly. She hesitated, then nodded. That evening, Graham Sterling sat in Eva's small, slightly shabby apartment, eating pizza from a box and listening to Mateo's animated play-by-play of the game. Eva watched him take it all in, the water stain on the ceiling, the mismatched furniture, the family photos on the wall. Instead of looking uncomfortable, Graham seemed fascinated, as if he were visiting an exotic country for the first time. Later, when Mateo went to his room to call a friend, Graham looked around the apartment again. "This feels like a home," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" Eva asked, gathering up the paper plates. "It feels lived in, like people matter here, not things." Eva smiled. "That's a nice way of saying it's a mess." "No," Graham shook his head. "My house has 7 bedrooms and a home theater, and it's never felt as real as this place does." Over the next few weeks, Graham continued his education in normalcy. He tried his first food truck taco, rode the subway, much to the alarm of his security team, and learned to make his own coffee instead of having his assistant bring it. Eva, meanwhile, found herself enjoying these glimpses into Graham's world. He took her to a small exclusive art gallery after hours, where they had the entire place to themselves. He brought her to the Falcon Ridge Company box at a baseball game, where she drank beer and taught him the finer points of the sport, while business associates looked on in amazement. After a month of this strange new friendship, Eva realized something had changed. The way her heart raced when Graham smiled at her, the way she found herself thinking about him in quiet moments, the way she dressed a little nicer on days she knew she would see him. She was falling for him. The realization hit her like a cold wave. This wasn't supposed to happen. Graham lived in a world of penthouses and private jets. She lived paycheck to paycheck in an apartment with unreliable heating. Whatever was developing between them couldn't possibly last. One evening, Graham invited Eva to dinner at his home. He had been oddly secretive about it, just asking her to dress nicely and be ready at 7. When the car he sent arrived at her apartment building, Eva stepped out in the one cocktail dress she owned, a simple black number she'd bought on clearance years ago for a company holiday party. She had taken extra care with her makeup and hair, nervous about seeing where and how Graham lived. The car took her to a sleek high-rise in the most expensive part of the city. A doorman greeted her by name, as if he'd been expecting her, and directed her to the private elevator that went directly to the penthouse. When the elevator doors opened, Eva stepped into a stunning apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. But what surprised her most wasn't the luxury. It was the smell of something burning. She followed the scent to the kitchen, where she found Graham wearing an apron over his dress shirt and tie, frantically waving a towel at a smoking pan. "Need some help?" Eva asked, trying not to laugh. Graham turned, looking both embarrassed and relieved to see her. "I wanted to cook dinner myself," he explained. "It's not going well." Eva rolled up her sleeves. "Let me see what we can salvage." Together, they managed to put together a decent meal from what Graham had in his impressively stocked kitchen. As they worked side by side, Eva realized he had been trying to create a normal evening for her, making dinner instead of having it catered, setting the table himself instead of having staff do it. When they finally sat down to eat, Graham raised his glass. "To cooking lessons," he said with a self-deprecating smile. Eva clinked her glass against his. "You know, most guys would just order takeout if they burned dinner." "I'm not most guys," Graham said, his eyes holding hers. "No," Eva agreed softly. "You're definitely not." After dinner, Graham gave her a tour of the penthouse. It was beautiful, but surprisingly sterile, with expensive furniture that looked barely used, and abstract art that seemed chosen to impress rather than because Graham actually liked it. The only room that felt personal was his home office, which had books on the shelves and family photos on the desk. Eva picked up one showing a young boy with a serious expression, standing between 2 well-dressed adults who weren't smiling. "Is this you?" she asked. Graham nodded. "My 10th birthday." Eva studied the photo. "You don't look very happy." "I wasn't," Graham admitted. "My parents threw a huge party, invited all the right children from all the right families. Not one of them was my friend." Eva set the photo down. "And now? Are you happy now?" Graham looked at her for a long moment. "I'm getting there." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken feelings. Eva was acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the way Graham's eyes kept dropping to her lips. "Eva," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." Before he could continue, his phone rang. Graham glanced at it and frowned. "I'm sorry, I have to take this. It's the Tokyo office." He stepped into the hallway, speaking rapidly into the phone. Eva wandered back to the living room, trying to calm her racing heart. What was he going to say? And what would she have done if he had tried to kiss her? When Graham returned, his expression had changed. He looked troubled. "I'm sorry," he said. "There's a situation with one of our investments in Asia. I need to deal with this tonight." "Of course," Eva said, trying to hide her disappointment. "I should get going anyway." Graham walked her to the elevator. "I'll have the car take you home." As the doors began to close, Graham suddenly put his hand out to stop them. "What I was going to say earlier," he began, then hesitated. "I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you." Before Eva could respond, he stepped back and let the doors close between them. The next morning, Eva woke to a text from Graham. "Dinner tonight?" "I promise not to cook," she smiled and texted back, "Deal." But as she got ready for her shift at Marino's, Eva couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Graham was showing her a side of himself few people ever saw. He was making an effort to understand her world. But at the end of the day, they came from completely different realities. Eva's phone pinged with a news alert. She opened it absently, then froze. There on her screen was a photo of her and Graham entering his building the night before. The headline read, "Reclusive billionaire Graham Sterling's secret romance with mystery woman." Eva sat heavily on her bed, staring at the photo. In an instant, their private connection had become public fodder, and she had a sinking feeling that this was just the beginning of their problems. As if on cue, her phone began ringing with calls from numbers she didn't recognize. When she checked her social media, she found dozens of new follow requests and messages from strangers. Somehow they had already found her. Eva's hands shook as she called Graham, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent a text. "Have you seen the news? People are already finding me online. What do we do?" Hours passed with no response. Eva had to turn off her phone to get through her shift at Marino's, where several customers openly stared at her and whispered. When she finally checked her messages that evening, there was nothing from Graham. Instead, she found her email inbox flooded with messages from reporters and TV shows, all wanting to interview the woman who captured Graham Sterling's heart. Her social media accounts had hundreds of new comments, some curious, some nasty. Eva felt sick. This wasn't what she had signed up for. She was just a normal person who had somehow stumbled into the orbit of someone famous. Now her privacy was evaporating before her eyes. When she arrived home, she found reporters waiting outside her apartment building. They surged forward as she approached, shouting questions. "How long have you been dating Graham Sterling? Did you meet him through your delivery job? Is it true you're living in his penthouse?" Eva pushed past them without answering, heart hammering in her chest. Inside, she found Matteo sitting on the couch looking worried. "What's going on?" he asked. "Some reporter called me at school." "How did they get my number?" Eva felt a surge of protective anger. They could harass her, but Matteo was off limits. She finally got through to Graham late that night after dozens of attempts. "I'm sorry I haven't called back," he said, sounding tired. "It's been chaos here. The board is concerned about the publicity." "The publicity?" Eva repeated incredulously. "Graham, there are reporters outside my apartment. They contacted my 15-year-old brother at school." "I know, I'm sorry," Graham said. "My PR team is working on a statement to make this go away." "A statement?" Eva felt a chill. "What kind of statement?" Graham was quiet for a moment. "They think it would be best to clarify that we're just friends. That the photo was misinterpreted." The words hit Eva like a slap. "Are we just friends, Graham?" Another pause. "It's complicated." "No, it's actually really simple," Eva said, anger replacing her fear. "Either you care enough about me to acknowledge whatever this is between us, or you don't. Eva, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. The board, the shareholders—" "You're right," Eva cut him off. "I don't understand your world, and maybe I never will, but I do understand one thing. You said you wanted me to see you as a man, not a bank account. Well, right now I need you to be that man." "I'm trying," Graham said softly. "Try harder," Eva replied, and hung up. The next morning, Eva checked the news with dread. Instead of the statement Graham had mentioned, she found a new headline. "Sterling Enterprises shares drop as CEO's personal life raises questions." There was a quote from a board member expressing concern about Mr. Sterling's recent judgment and focus. The article speculated that Graham's dalliance with a waitress might be affecting his business decisions. Eva's phone rang. It was Graham. I need to see you, he said without preamble. Can you meet me? Where? Eva asked warily. Somewhere private. This isn't a conversation I want to have with photographers around. They arranged to meet at a small bookstore cafe that Eva frequented. It was off the beaten path and unlikely to be staked out by reporters. When Graham walked in, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap in a failed attempt at disguise, Eva could see the strain on his face. He slid into the booth across from her, removing the sunglasses with a sigh. I'm sorry about all of this, he said. I never meant for you to be dragged into the spotlight. Eva nodded, waiting for him to continue. The board called an emergency meeting this morning, Graham went on. They're worried about the company's image, about my image. And what did you tell them? Eva asked carefully. Graham looked down at his hands. I told them my personal life is my business. Eva felt a small flicker of hope. And they reminded me that as the public face of Falcon Ridge, everything I do affects the company. Graham looked up at her, his expression troubled. They want me to distance myself from the situation. The flicker died. The situation, Eva repeated flatly. You mean me? Just until things calm down, Graham said quickly. Just for a few weeks. Eva stared at him in disbelief. You said you wanted me to see the real you. Well, I'm seeing him now. She stood up, gathering her purse. You said I was the first person who looked at you like you were just a man, but when it comes down to it, you're choosing to be the CEO instead. Eva, please. Graham reached for her hand. I just need time to sort this out. Eva pulled away. You know what you said to me that first day? You said you'd give me $10,000 to talk to you for an hour because I didn't care about your net worth. The truth is, I still don't care about it. But you do. It's all you care about. That's not true, Graham protested. Isn't it? Eva challenged. When the moment came to stand up for whatever is between us, you hesitated. You let me disappear. She turned and walked out of the cafe, tears burning behind her eyes. She had been right all along. Their worlds were too different. She had been a fool to think otherwise. As she walked down the street, Eva didn't notice the photographers until the flashes started going off in her face. The reporters had found them. Eva pushed past them, ignoring their questions, wishing she could disappear. Behind her, she heard Graham's voice calling her name, but she didn't look back. Some fairy tales weren't meant to have happy endings. 2 weeks passed. Eva's life had become nearly unrecognizable. The media attention had made it impossible for her to work. Customers at Marino's would ask for selfies instead of menus. Delivery customers would order food just to get a look at Graham Sterling's girlfriend. Her boss at the restaurant had finally asked her to take a leave of absence until things calmed down. Worse, reporters continued to camp outside her apartment building. Mateo had to have friends walk him to school to avoid being harassed with questions. Money was getting tight again, but Eva refused to touch the checks Graham had given her. That part of her life was over. She hadn't heard from Graham since that day at the cafe. No calls, no texts, no mysterious gifts. It was as if their entire relationship had been a strange dream. Eva was sorting through bills at the kitchen table when Mateo came home from soccer practice, slamming the door behind him. Hey, careful with the door, Eva said. What's wrong? Mateo threw his backpack on the couch. Those stupid reporters asked about Dad today. They wanted to know if I was happy about Mom's daughter dating a rich guy. I told them to get lost. Eva sighed. The reporters had dug into her past, uncovering details about her mother's death and her father's abandonment years ago. Nothing was private anymore. I'm sorry, buddy, she said. This will blow over eventually. When? Mateo demanded. I'm sick of it. And for what? That guy doesn't even care about you. If he did, he'd do something to stop this. Eva didn't have an answer. She'd been asking herself the same question. Her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Eva almost ignored it, assuming it was another reporter, but something made her answer. Is this Eva Carter? A woman's crisp voice asked. Yes, Eva replied cautiously. This is Diane Powell, HR Director at MarketSphere Creative. We'd like you to come in for an interview. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. We have an opening in our marketing department that matches your experience. Eva was confused. I didn't apply for any jobs at MarketSphere. No, the woman agreed. "But your resume was forwarded to us with a strong recommendation. The position is Assistant Marketing Director. Are you interested?" Eva's mind raced. Assistant Marketing Director was several steps above her old position, and MarketSphere was one of the top agencies in the city. "Yes," Eva said. "I'll be there." After the call ended, Eva sat in stunned silence. There was only one person who could have arranged this. Graham was trying to solve her problems again, with money, with connections, with his power. Just like always. Her first instinct was anger. How dare he meddle in her life after disappearing for 2 weeks? But as she thought about it more, Eva realized she was too tired to be angry. She needed the job. Matteo needed stability. If Graham wanted to help from a distance, maybe she should let him. The next morning, Eva dressed in her best interview outfit and took a cab to the MarketSphere offices. The receptionist led her to a conference room where 3 people waited to interview her. To Eva's surprise, the interview was completely professional. No one mentioned Graham Sterling or the recent media attention. They asked about her experience, her ideas, her approach to marketing challenges. Eva found herself relaxing, talking passionately about campaigns she'd worked on and strategies she'd developed. At the end, Diane Powell smiled. "We're very impressed, Miss Carter. We'd like to offer you the position. The salary is $85,000 annually, with benefits starting immediately." Eva nearly gasped. It was more than double what she'd made at her previous marketing job. "Can I ask," Eva said carefully, "who recommended me for this position?" The 3 interviewers exchanged glances. "The recommendation came through our CEO," Diane said. "But your qualifications speak for themselves. This isn't a favor. You're genuinely the best candidate we've seen." Eva accepted the job. Whatever Graham's involvement, she couldn't turn down this opportunity. She started the following Monday, throwing herself into the work with relief. It felt good to use her brain again, to create instead of just deliver. The media attention gradually decreased. A celebrity divorce and a political scandal pushed Eva off the front pages. The reporters outside her building dwindled, then disappeared entirely. Life began to return to something like normal, except now Eva had a job she loved and a salary that meant she didn't have to worry about rent or Matteo's soccer cleats. One evening a month after starting her new job, Eva was working late, finishing a presentation for a new client. Most of the office had emptied out. When she finally shut down her computer and headed for the elevator, she was surprised to see a light still on in the CEO's office. Curious about the person who had hired her, and perhaps about their connection to Graham, Eva knocked softly. On the open door. "Come in," called a female voice. Eva stepped into the office to find a stylish woman in her 50s looking up from a stack of papers. "Ms. Carter," the woman said with a smile. "I've been hoping to meet you. I'm Victoria Keller." "It's nice to meet you," Eva replied. "I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity here. It's been wonderful." Victoria gestured for Eva to sit. "I'm glad to hear it. Your work on the Horizon account was exceptional." Eva sat down, trying to find a polite way to ask what she really wanted to know. Victoria saved her the trouble. "So you're wondering about Graham Sterling's involvement in your hiring," she said directly. Eva nodded, surprised by her frankness. "Graham and I have known each other for 20 years, Victoria explained. "We were junior associates at the same firm before either of us had any power or money. He called me about a month ago and asked if I'd look at your resume." "Did he ask you to hire me?" Eva asked. Victoria laughed. "Graham knows better than to tell me how to run my company. He just said you were the most talented marketing person he'd ever met, and that circumstances had made it difficult for you to work in your field. He asked me to give you a fair shot." Eva absorbed this information. It wasn't the heavy-handed intervention she'd imagined. "How is he?" Eva found herself asking. Victoria's expression softened. "Honestly? Not great. The board nearly pushed him out after the media circus. He managed to hold on to his position, but it was a close thing." "I hadn't heard," Eva said quietly. "He doesn't want people to know," Victoria replied. "Graham has always been private about his struggles, but since I've known him so long, I can tell you he's not the same man he was before he met you." Eva didn't know what to say to that. "He's my friend," Victoria continued, "and in 20 years I've never seen him care about anyone the way he cares about you." Eva stood up, suddenly emotional. "Thank you for telling me, and for the job. I should get going, it's getting late." Victoria nodded. "Of course, and Eva, for what it's worth, I think he did what he thought was right. Graham has never been good at balancing his personal life and his professional responsibilities. He's learning." On her way home, Eva thought about Victoria's words. Had she been too hard on Graham? He'd faced consequences she hadn't considered. And he'd tried to help her in a way that respected her independence, not by throwing money at the problem. When Eva arrived at her apartment, she was surprised to find a small envelope that had been slipped under her door. Inside was a plain white card with handwritten words, "I miss our conversations." No signature, but Eva would recognize that handwriting anywhere. She stood in her hallway, the card in her hand, uncertain what to do. Part of her wanted to tear it up. Another part wanted to call him immediately. In the end, she placed the card on her bedside table and went to sleep. The next morning, Eva found another envelope under her door. This one contained a card that read, "The leaves are changing in Riverside Park. Remember when we sat on that bench and you taught me what normal friendship looks like?" Every day for a week, a new card appeared. Simple messages, memories of their time together. Nothing dramatic or apologetic. Just gentle reminders of a connection that had meant something. On the 7th day, the card said, "I'll be at our bench at 2 p.m. today, just to sit, just to watch the leaves fall. If you're there, too, that would make me happy. If not, I understand." Eva stood in her hallway for a long time, the card in her hand. She had a meeting at 1:30 that would likely run long. She had promised Matteo she'd help him with a school project that evening. She had a dozen reasons not to go. At 2:15, Eva walked into Riverside Park, her heels sinking slightly into the damp ground. The trees were ablaze with autumn colors, red and gold leaves drifting down in the gentle breeze. She saw him from a distance. Graham sat on their bench, no suit today but casual pants and a sweater. He wasn't looking at his phone or checking his watch. He was simply watching the leaves fall, as his note had said. Eva approached slowly, giving herself time to change her mind. But when Graham looked up and saw her, the pure relief and joy that transformed his face made her decision feel right. "You came," he said simply as she sat beside him. "I almost didn't," Eva admitted. Graham nodded, accepting this. "How's the new job?" "It's good," Eva said. "I met Victoria last week. She told me you two go way back." "We do," Graham confirmed. "She's one of the few people who knew me before I became what I am now." They sat in silence for a moment, watching a squirrel dart across the path in front of them. "I'm sorry," Graham said finally, "for not standing up for you, for letting the board dictate my personal life, for disappearing when things got difficult." Eva looked at him. The powerful CEO was gone. In his place was just a man, one who looked tired and a little sad. "What happened with the board?" she asked. Graham gave a small shrug. "They tried to force me out, said I was a liability. I managed to hold on to my position, but it was close. Why didn't you tell me?" What would I have said? "Sorry, I can't defend our relationship. My career is on the line?" Graham shook his head. "That would have just proven what you already thought. That I care more about my company than I do about you." "And do you?" Eva asked quietly. Graham turned to look at her directly. "No. I realized that during the worst of it. When I was fighting to keep my position, all I could think about was that I'd already lost something more important." Eva felt tears prickling behind her eyes. "So what now?" "Now?" Graham seemed surprised by the question. "Now we sit on this bench and watch the leaves fall. And maybe tomorrow, if you want, we sit here again. No expectations. No pressure. Just two people who miss talking to each other." The simplicity of it was appealing. No grand gestures, no $10,000 checks, no expensive gifts. Just time together, seeing where it might lead. "I think I'd like that," Eva said, and so began a new chapter. Graham and Eva met every day at the same bench. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they just sat quietly watching the park change as autumn deepened. Sometimes Matteo joined them, skeptical at first but gradually warming to Graham again, as he saw how differently he was treating Eva. One Sunday, about a month after they'd started meeting at the park, Graham invited Eva and Matteo to his penthouse for dinner. "I've been taking cooking lessons," he explained, looking a little embarrassed. "I want to make you a meal that doesn't set off the smoke alarm." Eva hesitated, remembering the last time she'd been to his home and what had followed. But Matteo was enthusiastic about seeing the rich guy's apartment, so she agreed. When they arrived, Eva was surprised to find the penthouse transformed. The sterile, decorator-perfect space had been replaced with comfortable furniture, colorful art, and even a few mismatched pieces that looked as if they'd been chosen because Graham liked them, not because they were expensive. "You redecorated," Eva observed as Graham showed them around. "It never felt like home before," Graham admitted. "I'm trying to change that." In the kitchen, Graham had clearly been hard at work. The counters were covered with ingredients, and delicious smells filled the air. "Impressed?" he asked with a smile. Cautiously. "Optimistic," Eva replied. "Let's see how it tastes first." The meal, a simple but well-prepared pasta dish with a chocolate cake for dessert, was surprisingly good. As they ate, Eva noticed how much more relaxed Graham seemed in his own space. He laughed easily at Matteo's jokes and told stories about his own teenage years that had both Carter siblings in stitches. After dinner, Matteo discovered Graham's game room and became engrossed in the latest video game system. Eva and Graham moved to the balcony where they could see the city lights spreading out below them. "This is nice," Eva said, leaning against the railing. "Different from the last time I was here." Graham nodded. "Everything's different now." "How so?" Eva asked. Graham was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Before I met you, my life was empty. Full of things, but empty of meaning. I didn't even realize how lonely I was until you walked into my office that rainy day." Eva smiled at the memory. "I thought you were crazy, offering me money just to talk." "It was crazy," Graham agreed, "but it was the best decision I ever made." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "These past months have taught me a lot, about what matters, about who I want to be. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying." "I can see that," Eva said softly. "There's something I need to show you," Graham said suddenly. "Wait here." He disappeared into the apartment, returning a moment later with a leather-bound notebook. He handed it to Eva, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "What's this?" she asked. "After you walked away that day at the cafe, I didn't know what to do," Graham explained. "I couldn't call you. I couldn't fix things with money or power. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely helpless." Eva opened the notebook and found page after page filled with Graham's handwriting. "I started writing down everything I wished I could say to you," Graham continued. "Every memory of our conversations, every feeling I was too afraid to express, everything I never said." Eva flipped through the pages, glimpsing fragments of Graham's thoughts. "Today I remembered how she laughed when I burned the sauce. I miss hearing about Matteo's soccer games. If I could go back to that press conference, I would tell them all that she matters more than any of this." The last page contained a single line. "I offered her $10,000 to talk, but I'd give up everything to hear her say my name again." Eva closed the book, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Graham," she whispered. He reached out tentatively and brushed a tear from her face. "I'm not asking for anything, Eva. I just wanted you to know that what we had was real to me. The most real thing in my life." Eva stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. "It was real to me, too." When Graham lowered his head to kiss her, it felt like coming home. Not to his luxury penthouse or her modest apartment, but to something they had built together. A space where they could both be exactly who they were. Inside, the phone rang. Graham ignored it. "Shouldn't you get that?" Eva asked. "It might be important." Graham shook his head. "Nothing's more important than this moment." The ringing stopped, then started again almost immediately. With a sigh, Graham went to answer it, Eva following him inside. "Sterling," he answered tersely. His expression changed rapidly as he listened. "When? How bad?" Another pause. "I'll be there as soon as I can." He hung up looking troubled. What's wrong? Eva asked. There's been a fire at one of our factories in Malaysia, Graham explained. Some workers are injured. I need to go handle this. Eva nodded. Of course. Go. Graham hesitated. I don't want to leave, not now. Hey, Eva said gently. People are hurt. They need you. This is your responsibility. Come with me, Graham said suddenly. Eva blinked in surprise. To Malaysia? Yes. Graham took her hands. In the past, I would have compartmentalized. Business in one box, personal life in another. That's what got us into trouble before. I don't want to do that anymore. Graham, I can't just drop everything and fly across the world. I have a job. Mateo has school. Graham looked disappointed but nodded. You're right. I wasn't thinking. Eva squeezed his hands. But I appreciate that you asked, that you wanted to bring me into that part of your life. It means a lot. Graham pulled her into a tight embrace. I'll be back as soon as I can. 3 days, 4 at most. I'll be here, Eva promised. After Graham left to pack a bag, Eva found Mateo still engrossed in his video game. Time to go, buddy, she said. Graham has to leave town for work. Mateo looked up. Are we coming back? The question was simple, but loaded with meaning. Eva thought about the notebook, about Graham's transformation, about the way he'd looked. At her on the balcony. Yeah, she said softly. I think we are. 3 days stretched into 5, then 7. Eva and Graham spoke daily, his voice tired as he described the complicated situation at the factory. What had initially seemed like a simple accident was revealing deeper problems with safety regulations and working conditions. I can't leave until this is resolved, Graham told her. These people have been mistreated, and it happened under my company's name. I need to make it right. Eva was proud of him for taking responsibility, even as she missed him more each day. The Graham she had first met might have delegated the problem to subordinates and returned to his comfortable life. This Graham was staying, losing sleep, making sure injured workers received proper care and compensation. On the 10th day, Eva was at work when Victoria Keller stopped by her office. Have you seen the news? Victoria asked. Eva shook her head. Been swamped with the new campaign. Why? Victoria placed a tablet on Eva's desk. On the screen was a news article with the headline, Sterling revolutionizes corporate responsibility with worker-focused reforms. The article detailed how Graham had not only compensated the injured workers and their families, but had announced sweeping changes to labor practices across all Falcon Ridge enterprises worldwide. He had committed to higher wages, better safety standards, and worker representation on subsidiary boards. The business world was in an uproar. Some analysts predicted disaster for the company's stock price. Others hailed it as a visionary move that would transform industry standards. At the end of the article was a quote from Graham. Meeting Eva Carter changed how I see the world. She taught me that true value isn't measured in profit margins, but in how we treat each other. These changes reflect that lesson. Eva stared at the screen, speechless. He mentioned you by name, Victoria said. He's never done anything like this before. Eva's phone rang. It was Graham. I just saw the news, she said when she answered. Are you angry? Graham asked. I should have asked before using your name. I'm not angry, Eva assured him. I'm proud of you. But the stock price is down 15%, Graham finished for her. The board is having fits, but it'll recover. And even if it doesn't, some things matter more. When are you coming home? Eva asked. There was a pause. That's why I'm calling. I need 2 more weeks here. We're setting up a foundation for the workers' families, and I want to make sure it's done right. Eva felt a pang of disappointment but understood. 2 weeks. I'll be here. That evening, as Eva was helping Mateo with homework, her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. When she opened it, she found a photo of Graham standing with his arm around a beautiful woman in a business suit. The caption read, Looks like Sterling has moved on already. Poor delivery girl, Eva's stomach clenched. She tried to ignore it. Tabloid gossip was nothing new. But another text came through with a different photo, this one showing Graham and the woman entering a hotel together. Despite her best efforts, doubt crept in. Who was this woman? Why hadn't Graham mentioned her? She tried to call him, but the call went to voicemail. She sent a text asking if everything was okay, but received no response. The next morning, Eva woke to find her social media flooded with the photos. Online gossip sites were speculating that Graham had a new girlfriend in Malaysia. Some, cruelly, suggested he had traded up from Eva to someone more suitable for his world. Eva tried to push away the doubts, but they persisted. Graham had changed, yes, but had he changed enough? Would he revert to old patterns when faced with someone who fit more neatly into his lifestyle? When Graham finally called back that evening, Eva was emotional. "Who is she?" she asked without preamble. "Who?" Graham sounded genuinely confused. "The woman in the photos, the one you've been seen with at the hotel." "Oh," Graham sounded relieved. "That's Mei Lin. She's heading the worker foundation we're setting up. We've been working 18-hour days together. The hotel is where we've been meeting with lawyers and local officials." Eva wanted to believe him, but the doubts had taken root. "She's very beautiful." "Eva," Graham's voice softened, "there is nothing between me and Mei Lin or anyone else. How could there be? My heart is still sitting on a bench in Riverside Park." Eva smiled despite herself. "I miss you." "I miss you too," Graham replied. "So much that I'm considering throwing corporate responsibility out the window and catching the next flight home." "Don't you dare," Eva said, feeling better. "Finish what you started. I'll be here when you get back." The next 2 weeks crawled by. The media lost interest in the Malaysia story as a celebrity scandal took center stage. Eva threw herself into her work, developing a campaign that had the potential to be the best of her career. At home, she and Mateo talked about Graham often, speculating about when he might return and what they might do together when he did. To Eva's surprise, Mateo had become one of Graham's biggest supporters. "He's different now," Mateo said one night as they ate dinner. "Not like those other rich guys on TV. He actually listens when people talk." Eva smiled. "He does, doesn't he? He's learned a lot." Mateo nodded sagely. "You taught him good." The day before Graham was scheduled to return, Eva received a call from Victoria Keller. "Have you spoken to Graham today?" Victoria asked, her voice tight with concern. "No," Eva replied, immediately worried. "What's happened?" Victoria sighed. "The board called an emergency meeting this morning. They're trying to force him out as CEO. The Malaysia changes were the last straw for some of the more conservative members." Eva felt sick. "Can they do that?" "They're trying," Victoria confirmed. "Graham holds enough shares to fight it, but it's going to be ugly. I thought you should know." After hanging up, Eva stood at her office window watching the city below. Graham had risked everything, his company, his position, his fortune, to do the right thing. And now he was paying the price. Her phone rang again. This time it was Graham. "I just heard," Eva said, "about the board." "News travels fast," Graham replied, sounding tired but calm. "I'm on my way back now, landing at JFK around midnight." "Do you want me to meet you?" "More than anything," Graham admitted. "But it's late, and I'll be a mess after." "The flight. Can I see you tomorrow?" "There's something important I need to ask you," Eva agreed, wondering what Graham wanted to ask that couldn't wait until he'd rested. They arranged to meet at their bench in Riverside Park the following afternoon. That night Eva hardly slept, her mind racing with possibilities. Was Graham going to tell her he had to fight for his company, that he needed space to deal with the board crisis, or was it something else entirely? The next day was unseasonably warm for late autumn. Eva dressed carefully in a simple blue dress that Graham had once said brought out her eyes. As she walked through Riverside Park, her heart pounded with anticipation and nervousness. Graham was already at their bench, looking tired but happy. When he saw Eva approaching, he stood, his face lighting up with a smile that erased any lingering doubts she might have had. "Eva," he said simply, pulling her into a tight embrace. "God, I've missed you." Eva held him close, breathing in his familiar scent. "How was the flight?" "Long," Graham admitted, keeping his arm around her as they sat on the bench. "But it gave me time to think about what matters." Eva studied his face. The board meeting. How bad is it? Graham shrugged. They've scheduled a vote for next week. It could go either way. And if you lose? Then I'll no longer be CEO of Falcon Ridge Enterprises, Graham said, with surprising calm. And I think I'm okay with that. Eva stared at him in shock. You've worked your whole life for that position. I have, Graham agreed. And for a long time I thought it was all that mattered. Success, power, proving myself to a father who's been dead for 10 years. He took Eva's hand. But now I know better. Eva squeezed his hand. So what will you do? That depends, Graham said, suddenly looking nervous. On your answer to what I want to ask you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Eva's breath caught in her throat. I had this whole speech prepared, Graham said with a self-deprecating smile, about how you changed my world, about how I'm a better man because of you. But sitting here now, it all comes down to one simple truth. He opened the box to reveal a beautiful but modest diamond ring. I love you, Eva Carter. Would you marry me? Eva looked at the ring, then at Graham's hopeful face. So much had happened since that rainy day when she'd delivered lunch to his office. So much had changed for both of them. Before I answer, Eva said carefully, I need to know something. If you lose the company, if all of this falls apart, will you regret the choices you've made? Will you resent me for changing your priorities? Graham shook his head without hesitation. The only thing I would regret is losing you. Everything else is just stuff. Important stuff maybe, but still just stuff. Eva felt tears in her eyes. Then yes, I'll marry you. As Graham slipped the ring onto her finger, a light rain began to fall just like the day they first met. Neither of them moved to take shelter. They had weathered bigger storms than this together. So what happens now? Eva asked, leaning her head on Graham's shoulder. Now, Graham said, smiling down at her, we write the next chapter together. News of Graham Sterling's engagement spread like wildfire. By the next morning, it was front-page news on every tabloid and business publication. Reclusive billionaire to wed former delivery driver. This time, Eva was prepared for the media attention. With Graham by her side, the cameras and questions didn't seem as intrusive or frightening. They faced the world together. We're not doing a big society wedding, Graham told reporters firmly during a brief statement outside Falcon Ridge Enterprises. Our relationship has always been about what's real, not what looks impressive. We'd appreciate privacy as we plan our future together. Despite his request, the engagement became the talk of New York's business and social circles. Some celebrated the unlikely romance. Others speculated that Eva was a gold digger who had somehow trapped one of the city's most eligible bachelors. Does it bother you? Graham asked one evening as they scrolled through particularly nasty comments online. What they're saying about you? Eva shrugged, curled up beside him on the couch in his penthouse. Not really. They don't know me. They don't know us. Graham pulled her closer. The board meeting is tomorrow. It could get ugly. Are you nervous, Eva asked, about losing my position? Graham considered the question. Less than I would have been 6 months ago. What about you? Are you worried about what happens if I'm not CEO anymore? Eva looked up at him. Why would I be? I didn't fall in love with your job title. Graham smiled and kissed her forehead. I know, but my life would change dramatically. Our life together would be different than what you might be expecting. Graham Sterling, Eva said, sitting up to look him in the eye. Do you really think I care about living in a penthouse or having a private jet or any of that stuff? I was happy in my apartment with spotty heating, remember? I just want you. Graham pulled her into a kiss. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Eva teased, but you're stuck with me anyway. The next morning, Graham dressed for the board meeting with unusual care. Eva straightened his tie and gave him a reassuring kiss. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together, she promised. Graham nodded, looking surprisingly calm for a man who might lose the company he'd spent his life building. I know we will. While Graham was at the meeting, Eva met with Victoria. For lunch, the older woman had become a friend and mentor over the past months, guiding Eva through the complexities of her new job and the even more complicated landscape of Graham's business world. How is he really doing? Victoria asked as they settled at their table. Graham never shows his cards even to his friends. He's more at peace than I expected, Eva admitted. It's like he's made his peace with whatever happens. Victoria nodded, thoughtfully. I've known Graham for decades, and I've never seen him like this. The man I met 20 years ago would have been pulling every string, calling in every favor, doing whatever it took to keep control. He wouldn't have slept for days. And now? Now he's calm, centered. Victoria smiled at Eva. That's your influence. Eva blushed. I didn't try to change him. That's precisely why you did, Victoria replied. You loved the man, not the power or the money. That kind of love changes people. Their lunch was interrupted by Eva's phone ringing. It was Graham. It's over, he said when she answered. The vote just finished. Eva's heart raced. And? There was a pause, then Graham's voice again. I'm still CEO. By one vote. Eva closed, her eyes in relief. That's wonderful news, it is, Graham agreed, but it came with conditions. The board wants assurances that I won't make any more unilateral decisions like Malaysia. They want oversight on major policy changes. Can you live with that? Eva asked. I think so, Graham said. It's a reasonable compromise. And it means I can keep pushing for the changes I believe in, just more gradually. After hanging up, Eva shared the news with Victoria, who looked pleased but not surprised. I suspected he might pull it off, Victoria admitted. Graham's always been persuasive, and for all their grumbling, most of the board knows he's a brilliant CEO. The weeks following the board meeting were busy ones. Graham worked to rebuild trust with his investors while continuing the reforms he'd started in Malaysia. Eva's new marketing campaign launched to rave reviews, cementing her position at MarketSphere. They decided on a small December wedding, just close friends and family. No society photographers, no lavish reception at the Plaza Hotel, just a meaningful ceremony at a small chapel followed by dinner at Graham's favorite restaurant. 2 weeks before the wedding, Eva was working late at her office when her phone rang. It was Mateo's soccer coach. Eva, there's been an accident at practice, the coach said, his voice tense. Mateo collided with another player. The paramedics are taking him to St. Mary's Hospital now. Eva's world tilted. She grabbed her purse and ran for the elevator, calling Graham as she went. He answered on the first ring. Mateo's hurt, Eva said, her voice shaking. They're taking him to St. Mary's. I'm on my way there now. I'll meet you there, Graham replied immediately. By the time Eva arrived at the hospital, Graham was already in the emergency waiting room. He took one look at her pale, frightened face and wrapped her in his arms. What happened? He asked, as he guided her to a chair. Soccer accident, Eva said. That's all I know. They won't tell me anything yet. Graham squeezed her hand. I'll find out what's going on. Before Eva could stop him, Graham was at the reception desk speaking intently to the nurse. Eva watched as the nurse made a call, then another. Within minutes, a doctor appeared and spoke with Graham, who nodded seriously before returning to Eva. Mateo has a concussion and a broken arm, Graham explained. They're taking him for a CT scan now to make sure there's no serious brain injury, but the doctor thinks he'll be fine. Eva sagged with relief. When can I see him? Soon, Graham promised. They're getting him settled in a room. An hour later, Eva sat beside Mateo's hospital bed, holding his good hand while he slept. The CT scan had come back clear, but the doctors wanted to keep him overnight for observation. His left arm was in a cast from wrist to elbow. Graham stood quietly in the doorway watching them. When Eva looked up, the expression on his face made her heart swell. You should go home and get some rest, she told him. There's no need for both of us to stay. Graham shook his head, entering the room to stand beside her. My family is here. I'm not going anywhere. My family. The words hung in the air between them, simple but profound. He's going to be so disappointed about missing the last game of the season, Eva said, glancing at Mateo's sleeping face. We'll make it up to him, Graham replied. Maybe a trip to see a professional game once he's recovered, Eva smiled. You're already thinking like a stepdad. Graham pulled up a chair beside her. I hope so. I want to get it right. They sat together through the night, taking turns dozing in the uncomfortable hospital chairs. When Mateo woke the next morning, groggy and confused, both Eva and Graham were there. What happened? Matteo asked, looking down at his cast with surprise. You decided to use your head as a battering ram against Jason Miller, Eva explained. Not your smartest move, Matteo groaned. Did we at least win? Tie game, Graham said, but apparently your teammate Miguel scored an impressive goal after you left. You were at my game? Matteo asked, surprised. I thought you had that big investor meeting. Graham shrugged. I rescheduled. Some things are more important. Matteo looked between Graham and Eva, a slow smile spreading across his face despite his injuries. You guys are really doing this, huh? The whole family thing. We really are, Eva confirmed. If that's okay with you. It's cool, Matteo said, trying to sound casual, though his smile gave him away. Graham's all right, for an old guy. Thanks, Graham said dryly. Coming from you, that's high praise. The doctor released Matteo that afternoon, with instructions for concussion monitoring and a follow-up appointment for his arm. Graham insisted they stay at the penthouse for a few days, where Matteo could be comfortable and they could keep a close eye on him. This place is sick, Matteo declared as he explored Graham's home, his injured arm in a sling. Can I play on the A? Gaming system? Just don't strain your eyes, Eva cautioned. Concussion, remember? As Matteo settled in front of the television, Eva found Graham in the kitchen preparing tea. Thank you, she said simply, for everything you did at the hospital, for being there. Graham handed her a steaming mug. You don't need to thank me for that. I told you you and Matteo are my family now. Eva sipped her tea, thinking, you know, we've never really talked about where we'll live after the wedding. Here? My place? Graham leaned against the counter. I've been thinking about that. What? Would you say to looking for a new place together? Something that isn't mine or yours, but ours from the beginning. I'd like that, Eva said, surprised and touched by the suggestion. But what about this place? It's gorgeous and I know how much it cost. Graham shrugged. It's just a place. I bought it because that's what successful people in my position do. They live in penthouses, but it's never felt like home, not until you and Matteo were here. Eva set down her mug and moved closer to him. Are you sure this is a big change? I'm sure, Graham said, pulling her into his arms. I want us to build something new together, a real home. Over the next week, as Matteo recovered from his injuries, they began looking at houses, not mansions or luxury apartments, but comfortable family homes in neighborhoods with good schools and parks nearby. Graham approached the search with the same enthusiasm he brought to business acquisitions, researching neighborhoods and creating spreadsheets of pros and cons. What about your board? Eva asked one evening as they reviewed listings online. Won't they expect the CEO to live somewhere more impressive? The board doesn't get a vote on where I live, Graham replied. Besides, most of them have family. Homes outside the city. This isn't as unusual as you might think. 10 days before the wedding, they found it. A beautiful brownstone with a small backyard, enough bedrooms for their family with room to grow, and a reasonable commute to both their offices. It needed some updates, but the structure was sound and the neighborhood perfect. This is it, Eva said, as they toured the master bedroom for the second time. This feels right. Graham nodded, watching her expression. I think so too. They made an offer that day. The seller, impressed by Graham's reputation and eager to close before the holidays, accepted immediately. Graham insisted on putting both their names on the deed. But I can't contribute half, Eva protested. Not even close. That's not the point, Graham replied. This is our home 50-50. What's mine is yours. The week before the wedding was a whirlwind of final preparations and packing. They decided to move into the brownstone after a short honeymoon, giving themselves time to make necessary repairs and updates. The night before their wedding, Eva found Graham in his home office, writing in a leather-bound notebook. He looked up as she entered, smiling but quickly closing the book. What are you working on so intently? Eva asked, curious. Graham slipped the notebook into a drawer. You'll find out tomorrow. A surprise? Eva raised an eyebrow. I thought we agreed to keep things simple. We did, Graham assured her. Here's just something personal. Nothing extravagant, I promise. The next morning dawned clear and cold, a perfect December day. Eva, dressed in her wedding gown, an elegant but simple design she'd fallen in love with at a small boutique. No 20-foot train or diamond tiara, just a beautiful dress that made her feel like herself. Matteo, his cast now decorated with signatures from his soccer team, served as Ava's escort in place of the father who had abandoned them years ago. He looked handsome and grown up in his new suit, taking his role seriously. "You look really pretty, Eva," he told her as they prepared to leave for the chapel. Eva blinked back tears, careful not to ruin her makeup. "Thanks, buddy. You clean up pretty well yourself." The chapel was small but charming, decorated simply, with winter greenery and white candles. Only about 40 guests were in attendance, close friends, a few of Graham's relatives, some colleagues from both their workplaces. Noticeably absent were most of the board members and society figures who would have expected invitations to the sterling wedding of the century. Graham waited at the altar, looking more nervous than Ava had ever seen him. As the music began and Ava walked down the aisle on Matteo's arm, Graham's face transformed with a smile so genuine and full of love that Ava nearly stopped breathing. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They had written their own vows, and when it came time to share them, Graham reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook. "Ava," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "before I met you, I measured my life in acquisitions and achievements. I had everything money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered." He glanced down at the notebook. "These are words I've been writing since the day you walked back into my life. Words about how you changed me, how you taught me to see the world through new eyes, how you showed me what it means to be truly wealthy, in love, in purpose, in connection." Graham turned a page in the notebook. "I vow to spend every day trying to be the man you believe I can be. I vow to love Matteo as my own son. I vow to build a life with you that is rich in all the ways that matter." Eva wiped away tears as she spoke her own vows, promising to stand by Graham through whatever challenges came their way, to build a family together based on trust and respect, to love him for the man he was, not the position he held. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Graham kissed Eva with a tenderness that said more than words ever could. The small gathering erupted in applause. At the reception, held in a private room at Graham's favorite restaurant, Victoria raised a toast to the newlyweds. "I've known Graham Sterling for 20 years, she began, raising her glass. "And I can honestly say I've never seen him as happy as he is today. Eva, you've accomplished what many thought impossible. You've shown this hard-headed businessman that the most valuable assets can't be listed on a balance sheet." As the evening continued, Eva found a moment to slip away from the celebration, needing a quiet minute to absorb everything. She stood in a small alcove, watching her new husband laugh with Matteo and their friends. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Sterling," Graham asked, appearing beside her. Eva smiled at the new name. "I was just thinking about that rainy day when I delivered lunch to your office. If someone had told me then that we'd end up here, I would have thought they were crazy." Graham pulled her close. "The best stories are the ones no one sees coming." "Speaking to have stories," Eva said, "when do I get to read the rest of what's in that notebook?" Graham kissed her forehead. "It's my wedding gift to you, the complete record of our story from my perspective. All the things I thought but didn't say, all the moments that changed me." "I can't wait to read it," Eva said softly. "There's something else," Graham added, suddenly looking nervous again. "Something I wanted to ask you about. Another surprise." Eva raised an eyebrow. "Sort of." Graham took a deep breath. "What would you think about starting a foundation, using part of our resources to help people who are struggling like you were? Single parents, people who lost jobs and need retraining, families with medical debt." Eva stared at him in surprise. "You want to start a charity?" "Not just a charity," Graham clarified. "A real program that makes a difference. And I want you to run it, if you're interested." "Me?" Eva's eyes widened. "But I don't know anything about running a foundation." "You know what it's like to need help," Graham pointed out. "You know what would have made a difference in your life before we met. That's more valuable than any business degree." Eva considered the idea. "I do love my marketing job. You could do both, at least at first," Graham suggested. "Start small. See if it's something you enjoy. I think I'd like that, Eva said slowly, warming to the concept. Helping others the way you helped me. Graham shook his head. You helped yourself, Eva. I just provided resources. There are so many people out there with your talent and determination who just need a fair chance. They rejoined the reception. But the idea took root in Eva's mind. By the time they left for their honeymoon a few days later, she had already started making notes about how the foundation might work. Their honeymoon was a 2-week stay at a quiet beach house on a small Caribbean island. No fancy resort, no scheduled activities, just time together away from the pressures and demands of their everyday lives. One evening as they walked along the beach at sunset, Eva brought up the foundation idea again. I've been thinking about what you said, she told Graham, about helping people who just need a fair chance. I want to do it. Graham smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. But I want to do it right, Eva continued. Not just handing out money, but creating real opportunities, job training, affordable childcare, healthcare access, all the things that keep talented people trapped in cycles of struggle. Whatever you envision, we'll make it happen, Graham promised. It's going to take a lot of your money, Eva warned. Graham laughed. Our money, and what better way to use it? Besides, I've been thinking too about Falcon Ridge. What about it? Eva asked. About whether I still want to be CEO long-term, Graham admitted. I've been in that role for 12 years. Maybe it's time for something new. Eva stopped walking. To look at him. Are you serious? You fought so hard to keep that position. I did, Graham agreed, and I'm glad I won that fight. But now I'm wondering if I'm holding on for the right reasons, or just because it's what I've always done. What would you do instead? Eva asked. Graham shrugged. I'm not sure yet. Maybe focus on the foundation with you. Maybe teach business, ethics at a university. Maybe just take some time to figure out what really matters to me now. Eva took his hand as they continued walking. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I know, Graham said, squeezing her hand. That's why I can even consider these changes. Before you, my identity was completely wrapped up in being CEO of Falcon Ridge. Now I'm more than that. I'm your husband. I'm Matteo's stepfather. I'm a man figuring out what he wants the second chapter of his life to look like. They returned from their honeymoon to the holiday season and their new home. The brownstone had been prepared for their arrival, with necessary repairs completed, and their belongings moved in. It wasn't perfectly decorated or magazine-ready, but it felt like home from the moment they walked through the door. Christmas. That year was unlike any Graham had experienced before. Instead of formal parties and obligatory gift exchanges, there was a real tree that they decorated together, homemade cookies that Eva and Matteo taught Graham to bake, and presents chosen, with care rather than expense in mind. On Christmas morning, Eva presented Graham with a leather-bound journal of her own. I thought we could start a new tradition, she explained as he unwrapped it. Each year we fill a notebook with memories, thoughts, dreams for the future, a record of our life together. Graham was touched by the gift and its meaning. I'd like that, he said, already thinking about what he would write in those pages. As the new year began, so did their new life. The Eva Carter Sterling Foundation launched with a mission to provide comprehensive support to struggling families and individuals. Eva balanced her marketing career with her growing passion for the foundation's work, while Graham began the careful process of grooming a successor at Falcon Ridge. 6 months after their wedding, Graham officially announced his plan to step down as CEO by the end of the year. The business world was shocked, but the transition was smooth. Graham remained on the board, but found greater satisfaction in teaching a course on ethical business practices at the local university and working alongside Eva at the foundation. Their brownstone became a true home, filled with love, laughter, and occasionally teenage drama, as Matteo navigated high school. It wasn't always perfect. They disagreed, they compromised. They learned to blend their very different life experiences into something new. On their first anniversary, Graham presented Eva with a beautifully bound collection of all his notebooks. From the first one he'd started after she walked away at the cafe, to the most recent entries about their life together. 10,000 words wasn't nearly enough, he told her as she leafed through the pages. It's taken thousands more to capture. What you mean to me? Eva smiled, remembering that first bizarre offer in his office. Best $10,000 you ever spent? Graham pulled her close. Best decision I ever made, asking you to stay. And Eva, who had once been just a delivery driver with overdue bills and a broken-down car, looked around at the life they had, built together, not because of Graham's money or her ambition, but because they had both been brave enough to see past the surface to the person underneath. I'm glad I stayed, she said softly, and even gladder that I came back. Outside their window, rain began to fall, gentle and cleansing. Neither of them moved to close the curtains. They had learned to embrace the storms together, knowing that sometimes the most unexpected weather brings the greatest blessings. The end.